Hello and welcome to Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy. I'm your host Leo, and this week we are discussing The Boy and the Heron. Now, originally I was going to do Jurassic Park the book today, but I kind of I could do it without the book, but I kind of wanted to finish reading it, and I hadn't finished reading it yet. As I stated in... Actually, does this come out before? It doesn't matter. As I mentioned in the RPG Hangout Challenge episode, I've been kind of still adjusting to work and whatnot. And I've been reading it for a little while now, but I've finally gotten into a bit of a flow where I can properly read a lot more while I work. But yeah, with that, I've put it off, and I figured, it would actually fit a little bit better in Spooky Month. So I'll just slot it at the end of there to give me plenty of time to read it and whatnot while I go through the movies that we're going to look at for Spooky Month. Yay. But anywho, I was talking with one of my coworkers, and we got talking, and he mentioned how The Boy and the Heron was good. And I was like, oh yeah, you know what? I've been meaning to watch that because I saw that it was on Max, and I thought, I'll get around to that eventually. And I was like, wait a second. I have an opening now since I moved Jurassic Park into Spooky Month, so I can do it now. Boom. And it's a movie, and I can watch it real quick and then record it. That works nicely. So here we are, talking about The Boy and the Heron. Now, this is kind of my first proper Studio Ghibli movie, I think. Kind of. See, my history with Studio Ghibli is kind of hit and miss. Mostly miss, to be honest. So, the very first Studio Ghibli film I watched was Ponyo, which is a very weird but fun movie that I watched when Netflix still did the DVD rentals. But I didn't really watch anything after that. I had a friend in college suggest some Studio Ghibli films, and I kind of just pretended to watch them because they didn't really seem to catch my interest at the time. Because at the time I was looking for more like action-y stuff, and Studio Ghibli seems more whimsical, and that kind of holds true here. There's a little bit of action, but not really, as the movie's more contemplative and just wanting to show off a whole bunch of cool visuals. Not that that's a bad thing, of course. It's very beautiful, and it definitely has a vibe. I also felt that covering this film right now would be pretty good, as I've been talking a lot more about like Ni no Kuni 2 and whatnot, which, has some Studio Ghibli influences. Whether or not people from Studio Ghibli worked on it, I can't fully say, but there's definitely that style to it. This film is pretty good. It came out last year. One of the big things about it is it's part of the Robert Pattinson resurgence, where last year there was, or at least around last year, there was the Batman, and now he's also doing some voice acting, and he's doing more acting. Like, he's going to be in Mickey 17, which I've seen the trailer for, and it looks very good. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But yeah, so I was very curious about it, and I was like, I really need to give Studio Ghibli another go. And I did. Now, this film is set during World War II, though World War II is not really much of a factor. It opens with... I'm going to also just say, right now, I'm going to call people boy, heron, dad, stepmom, mom. That's how I'm going to do it for like the main cast. So we follow Boy as he's kind of woken up to a bit of a hectic situation, and he runs around to see what's going on, to find that the hospital nearby is burning. And there's a big chance that the fire could spread because everything around this time is made of wood. But his main concern is that his mother is currently at the hospital and is likely to die in the fire. So he runs to try to go save her, but it's too late. Jump cut a year later. They have decided in the war or because of the war, or during the war, one of those things. Because of war, they decide to leave Tokyo and go to the countryside, essentially. Kind of Narnia-esque situation. And they go there to meet his new mom, his stepmom. Now, stepmom is his mom's sister, and she lets him know that, hey, guess what? I'm pregnant. As the dad goes off to the factory, he works at a factory that's manufacturing cockpit windscreens, I guess. I can't think of the term right now, but he manufactures those. Yeah, so him and his stepmom are kind of going around the house, just kind of going there. He's still in a bit of a shock, even though, because of the move and everything, he's not feeling great. And also, he feels, that his aunt is trying to replace his mom, which kind of she is. It's a very weird situation, because especially since it's only been a year, that implies that they grew close fast after the death of the boy's mother. But yes, after that, he's trying to settle in, and he has a nightmare about his mom, where she says that she's not dead. He has a nightmare about that, and he waits for his dad to come home, and then he goes off to bed. The next day, he goes to school, and his dad drops him off in a car. Now, this is kind of a big thing, because, the new kid coming up in a car, people are going to have to pick up their jaws from the floor kind of thing. And it kind of ended up having the opposite effect. Instead of him becoming instantly popular, all of the kids start picking on him and kind of beat him up. And in order to make it seem more severe, because he doesn't want to go to school, he takes a rock and smacks himself in the head, causing a deep gash, and blood starts pouring down the side of his head. And there's a mad rush, to clean him up and take care of him. His stepmom, carefully takes care of him and gets him put into bandages and cuts his hair to keep it from matting, and then sets him to bed rest. His dad rushes home to see what the hell was going on and try to figure out who it was, and he eventually ends up saying you don't have to worry about going to school because I paid them, I think he said 300 yen, and they're you should have seen them. His dad has a bit of an issue of trying to flaunt their pseudo wealth. It's a bit of a character flaw, but it's never really addressed. But yeah, so while he's in bed rest, the Heron ends up coming to his window and starts repeating the things that he's heard in his dreams and whatnot. And the Heron's starting to look fucking weird. So he throws something at the Heron to get it out the window, and then has his stepmom help him close the window. Now, something odd ends up happening. So the boy starts to get curious about what's going on. He goes outside, ends up talking to the Heron. After he tries to kill it, he takes a wooden sword and tries to kill the Heron. And he's like, I know you're not a normal Heron, what the hell? And the Heron starts saying oh, your mother's not actually dead. You can come see her if you join us. And then a bunch of frogs start climbing on him saying, join us. And he starts getting encapsulated. His stepmom and the old ladies of the house rush out to try to find him. And she comes out with a bow, shoots a bow at the Heron, and scares the Heron off and the frogs and whatnot. He ends up passing out and has this weird dream thing, and they start trying to play it off as if nothing happened. He finds the wooden sword perfectly intact, but when he picks it up, it crumbles. He goes around, and after this event, his stepmom ends up falling ill due to complications, potentially with the pregnancy. And the old ladies say, it was the same with you and your mother. She had difficulties with your pregnancy, but came out on the other end. So he goes and visits her, sees that she has the bow that she used to scare off the Heron. So he's realizing that it's not a dream. Or it wasn't a dream, and it wasn't his imagination. Then he says his thing after he talks to her. She says that, she feels terrible for not protecting him because he is her big sister's son, and she feels like she's failed as a potential mother. He leaves, and finds the tower, starts crawling in it. That might have ended up no, that happened a lot sooner. Sorry. But he begins training. He makes himself a makeshift bow out of like bamboo and makeshift arrows, and starts training to potentially hunt the heron. But he gets distracted when he finds his mother's journal, and he reads it. And he at some point sees his stepmom walk out into the woods, but she never returns. And everyone, all the old ladies and whatnot, are looking for her. And he goes out to find her and help join the search. And he's like, I'm pretty sure she went to the tower. So they go to the tower, and the old lady that accompanies him is like, hey, no, we shouldn't go in there. Only your family can hear the heron. Only your family can hear all this stuff. No. But they go in, find the heron. The heron's like, hey, here's your mom, like I promised. Turns out, no, she's just like a weird creation from the heron. And then the old guy at the top of the tower says, hey, be their guide. And they sink into the floor and begin their journey. So, in this new world, and this kind of happens around the halfway point of the film, by the way, he finds himself on like this island thing where there's like an ocean that stretches out, and there's these boats going along. And he turns around and goes further inland and finds a gate with a low stone wall, and it says, those who seek my knowledge will die. He looks at this, and then the pelicans that are around him charge him and push him through the gate. Passing by, there's a woman on a boat, and she's like, ah, shit, someone opened the gate to the cemetery. That's no good. So she pulls over, scares away the pelicans, and retrieves the boy. The boy has a feather from the gray heron. And the heron's feather, it's his 7th flight feather. It's somehow his weakness, and it's why when he shot an arrow at him earlier, it kind of chased the heron around and shot him in the beak, putting a hole in his beak. But yeah, she's like, okay. She like does this weird fire circle thing, says a little prayer, and then she says, okay, they're gone. Just walk backwards and whatnot, and they'll be fine. He explains some stuff to her about like why he's there and whatnot, and they hop in the boat and they go off to her weird like island that's a boat that's an island but a boat. It's weird. And there's these like little white blobby things that are just kind of there, and on their way they fish something, and they take it back to her island place and they butcher it, and the guts are for the little white goo things because they need the nutrients to fly. Later that night, he kind of figures out that she is one of the old ladies, specifically the one that he had taken with him, but not the one that he took with him. It's just that she's the same person. And he goes, and while he's looking wistfully at the night, one of the blobby things comes up to him, and then like inhales, inflates, and floats away. And then a bunch of them come up, inflate, and float away. And she explains to him that they are going up to become people. Like they're kind of like the souls and whatnot of the unborn, and they go and they're to become people eventually. But then the pelican starts to eat them. So the lady Himiko, who I'm just going to spoil right here now, is his mom. She sets them on fire, but she, in the process, also does end up burning some of the little blobby guys. But the ones that didn't get incinerated do get to float up, and the birds are fine. Later that night, when he's trying to sleep, he hears a noise, and he goes to find one of the pelicans is dying right by their toilet. So he goes and talks to it, and it's like, hey, put me out of my misery. Like, this is fucking awful. And he's like, you were eating the things. And he's like, dude, we were brought here to eat the things. Like, we can't eat the fish in the ocean. What do you expect? So we eat them. And our young are losing the ability to fly. It's a fucking nightmare, guy. And then he dies. So after that, the Heron reappears and is like, hey, we need to go find your stepmom, dude. And he's like, fuck you, I'll do it myself. And the Heron's like, whatever, sure, I guess. And they get into a bit of a fight, and then they just kind of chill. And the Fisher lady's like, hey, you guys should go look for her together. So they set off to go find her. They go and are at the blacksmith's house and find it's been taken over by parakeets. These big, hulking, buff bird dudes. And he's like, okay, here's what we'll do. The Heron's like, I'll cause a distraction, after which then you can, sneak in and get in, because you have to go through there to get to the tower where she will be. And the boy's like, okay, sure. So the Heron gets them to chase him, and he dives off of a cliff, and they follow. The boy runs up to the house, goes in, and is immediately surrounded by a shit ton of parakeets. And he's like, hey, so what, you're gonna eat me like my stepmom? And he's like, the parakeet's like, nah, man, your stepmom's pregnant, we don't eat babies. So, no. At that moment, the fire lady bursts in, saves him, takes him to her house, and is like, okay, yeah, so you're looking for my little sister. She kind of wants to stay here because she wants to give birth, but I'll show you how to get out of here. And I guess I'll show you to her at some point. They sneak into the castle. She shows him how to get out. The castle tower thing's been taken over by the parakeets. She shows him how to get out, but the parakeets are kind of coming from both sides. So they have to sneak into his world for a bit, and they have to hold on to the door so that they can get back. And they see that his dad is coming towards the tower, because the dad was told the story of the tower by one of the old ladies and decided to go check it out himself. The story with the tower is thus. The initial story that you're told at the beginning of the film is that the boy's mom's great uncle had built the tower, went mad for some reason, left a book open, and then disappeared. That's the initial story. But then the old ladies tell the dad that the story of the tower is that it fell from the sky. A big rock fell from the sky, and about 30 years later was discovered by the great uncle. The great uncle then decided to build a tower around it because he thought it would be special. Went mad, disappeared. And then at some point, the boy's mom, when she was about his age, also disappeared. She went into the world, disappeared for, I believe they said about a year, and then reappeared all happy and fine, having not really aged a day since she had left. But yeah, a bit awkward that she supposedly disappeared for a year and then just kind of reappeared. Anywho, so that's what gets him to decide to go. And as he's coming up the hill, he sees his son, and I'm guessing the girl, but focuses primarily on the son. And this boy's like, nah, we need to get my stepmom back first. Opens the door, but the parakeets are right there, and they push through. And as they're coming through, they're going from these big hulking birds to normal parakeet budgie size, and they float away. And the son then goes back through the door. So his dad, for a bit, assumes that his son turned into a bird, I guess, because he's like, my son turned into a budgie. But they go back in. His mom leads him through to where his stepmom is. And she's like, hey, the stone's not happy that you're here. We're not supposed to go into the, like, delivery room, but I'm at least giving you a chance to convince her or whatever. He goes in and he's like, hey, it's me, the boy, come home. And she like rouses and wakes up, and she kind of goes into a bit of a panic state. She's like, why the hell are you here? And he's like, come on, let's go home. And she's like, no, I don't want to go with you. I hate you for some reason. Like, why, how and why she went from this loving, caring person to I hate you, to after this, she also then goes back to just being fine, I guess. It's so confusing. He, at this point, switches from calling her by her name or calling her auntie to saying mom, calling her mom. And from this point, he refers to her as mom. I'll still call her stepmom, but mom. So he is like pushed out of the room by this weird paper thing. His mom catches him, burns away the paper, and asks permission from the stone to let her go. And the stone does a weird staticky thing, and she takes this as an affirmative, I guess. And it's like, hey, you know, sister, all you have to do is just come to us, walk out, and you'll be okay. Everything will be okay. But then there's another weird staticky thing, and it knocks both his mom and him completely out. The parakeets flood in, take the boy away, and take her away separately. And the boy goes through this dream sequence thing where he meets the great uncle, who states that he wants the boy to become his successor. The boy, looking at the stones, because I guess in order to build this world or keep the world running, the old man has been stacking stones every 3 days for the past God knows how long. But he wants the boy to become the successor, to stack the stones and whatnot. And the boy's like, yeah, but those stones there, they seem like gravestones. They have like malice to them, I can sense. And the old man's like, and that's why I want you to be the successor. The boy then wakes up in a kitchen where there's just a big parakeet chef guy sharpening a knife, and he does a cutesy little like thing to him. He's like, I'm gonna kill you, yay. The heron then comes in, saves him, breaks him free. They sneak through, and they find that his mom is being carted away by the parakeet king to go to their lord, which is the great uncle, or the great great uncle, so that they could potentially get leverage, at least is what they state in the story. They follow and work their way up, and then we follow the parakeet king for a bit as he goes and talks to their lord, the great uncle. But it's like a very calm, chill conversation where the guy's like, hey, I want the boy to be my successor, give him some time. Like, I do understand that he did the big no-no, and he went into the delivery room, but it's all cool. It's fine. But the parakeet king isn't super happy about this. He's like, oh, we need to take control ourselves and whatnot to keep this place safe, because he's like super beloved by all the parakeet guys, and like the narrative around the parakeets is a bit weird, but we'll just kind of set that aside. So the boy, even though the tower thing that they were climbing collapsed, the door's right in front of them, so they just go through it, start working their way through. He meets up with his mom, and then they go see the great uncle, who's like, hey, I want you to be the successor. These 13 stones here, I've searched far and wide. They are pure and whatnot. You can build this world to be anything you want. What do you say? And the boy's like, see this scar here? I did that myself. It is a sign of my own malice. I should not touch those fucking stones. I also want to go out and sure, the world outside sucks, but like, I'd rather go out there and make friends and, meet people and whatnot than, squirrel myself away in this world. And the great uncle's like, okay, yeah, sure, you can go do that, but please just stack these stones first, or else this world's going to crumble. At that moment, the Parakeet King jumps out and is like, you want to... It's all balanced on these stones? What? So he stacks the stones really quick, but he doesn't do it very good. And so they start wobbling, and he gets frustrated and just cuts the stones and everything in half, and the world immediately starts crumbling. The great uncle's like, well, okay, you guys should go back to your own worlds. Go work your way back to the time and whatnot. Be safe, I guess. So they start running through the thing. They work their way back to the door, and he's like, okay, so this is my door, cool. What about you? And she's like, I need to go back to my time to become your mom. And he's like, I know, but if you go, you're gonna die in a fire. And she's like, I mean, fire doesn't scare me. And he's like, that's not really the point. I just don't want you to die. And she's like, anywho, she's like, you're gonna be a great son. Bye. And at that moment, his stepmom and the fishing lady come around the corner, and they all work their way through the door, and a bunch of parakeets also work their way through. They get shat on as the birds turn into small birds and panic, but they walk their way through, and then there's a voiceover that's like, 2 years after the war ended, we went back to Tokyo. And then that's how the movie ends. So it's not a bad film. It's very beautiful, but the plot is a little bit all over the place for me, a little bit. I understand that's kind of the Studio Ghibli way, but I was expecting, one, a little bit more resolution, a little bit more, I don't know, reasons for things that were happening, Because this world that their great-grand uncle made is also like purgatory. There's a bunch of dead people, but at the same time there's like new people going out to the real world, but at the same time it's a world that's just been manufactured, so it's not really that. And there's like a slight hint that the world might rebuild because he took one of the stones, potentially one of the like malice stones. So implications everywhere. And the thing is, I'm pretty sure like Studio Ghibli doesn't do sequels, so you're fucking screwed. You figure it out, I guess. But yeah, overall, again, it's a beautiful film. I do recommend it, at least to just watch. Maybe don't watch it high, because I can definitely see that freaking someone the fuck out. But yeah, it's pretty fun. It takes a little while to pick up because it is a little slow at the beginning, and you kind of get confused as things start continuing to like shift slightly, and then they shift the other way, and then they shift slightly again. But eventually it starts, like once it gets into like the other world and whatnot, it starts to slowly pick up more pace, and it becomes a lot smoother. Like there was genuinely a bit where I was thinking like, is the boy in the heron thing, like he's not going to go to another world? Is he just going to like stay here and be harassed by a talking heron that sometimes looks weird? Then it turns out that there's a guy in the heron. It's so bizarre, but it is interesting. I can say it's very interesting. Does it make me want to watch other Studio Ghibli films? Kinda, because I'm very curious to see if there's, because I know that they do some more like grounded stories. Of course, they have even more supernatural stories, like Kiki's Delivery Service, where she's flying around on a broom the entire time. So, like, I might give something else a shot to see if there is a bit more something, I kind of want to try one of the more grounded ones first, and then something that's a little bit more whimsical. I need to, at some point, see Princess Mononoke. I want to see one of the ones about, like, aviation and flying. And then I probably should watch My Neighbor Totoro at some point, because I've never seen it, and people always talk about it, so I might as well give it a go. But yeah. with that said, I'll go ahead and call it there for this episode. I do, again, recommend it, and I look forward to whatever else Studio Ghibli I dip my toes in. Probably the next thing, if anything, will be like Ni no Kuni 2, which I believe has a bit more, even more kind of Ghibli-ness than Ni no Kuni 2. But, yeah. So next week begins Spooky Month, where we are going to be diving into some spooky movies. The first one of which is the sequel to the Silent Hill film, Silent Hill Revelations. I look forward to finally seeing the sequel and talking about it. Then, after that, we will be doing Aliens, the sequel to Alien. It's mostly a sequel thing this spooky month. We're doing Silent Hill Revelations, Aliens, then we're doing the prequel to The Thing, and then we will do Jurassic Park the book. So, I hope you guys are looking forward to Spooky Month. And, yeah. But with that said, thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys enjoyed this, feel free to give it a rate and review on any podcast catcher of your choice, but also feel free to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. And with that said, once again, thank you guys so much for listening. I will talk to you guys next week. Goodbye.